Sometimes the smallest choices place us in the middle of someone else's unfinished story. A missed call, a favor for a friend, one unlocked door. She didn't plan to be there. She was only filling in. One night, one shift, just clean the apartment and leave. But then she walked into the study and saw a photo of herself on the desk. Not recent, not staged, a candid picture of her as a child, standing next to a woman she barely remembered. What she didn't know was that this wasn't a coincidence, because years ago, that little girl had unknowingly said something that changed a man's life. And now, in a twist of fate neither of them could have predicted, that man is the one she's working for, and he never forgot her. If you believe in fate, second chances, and the hidden ways people stay connected across time, this story is for you. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Emily didn't even want the shift. It was her only night off that week, and her shoes were still damp from yesterday's rain. But her roommate, Lena, had sounded desperate on the phone. Sick, maybe food poisoning, maybe the flu, and begged Emily to take her client just this once. It's an easy one, Lena had said between coughs. Private apartment. New guy. Loaded, but barely home. You'll be in and out in 2 hours. Emily hadn't asked questions. She never did anymore. When you owed 3 months' rent and your fridge held more baking soda than food, you took what you could get. So she grabbed her tote bag, the one with the broken zipper, and headed across town to the upscale tower where people with drivers and doormen lived. The kind of building where everyone smelled like citrus and quiet money. The doorman barely glanced at her ID before waving her through. She took the elevator to the 17th floor and found apartment 1704 waiting. Tall black door, polished brass numbers, and silence on the other side. She hesitated before knocking, but no one answered. Lena had warned her. He probably won't be there. Just clean what's visible. Don't touch anything personal. Emily used the spare key from the lockbox and stepped inside. The apartment was beautiful in that cold, expensive way, all sleek lines and soft lighting. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a leather sofa too perfect to sit on, marble countertops that reflected the glow of a single standing lamp. She let the door close behind her and took a breath. Everything smelled like cedar and linen. She tied up her hair, slipped on gloves, and began with the kitchen. Felt wrong to even wipe the counters. Nothing was dirty. Not really. A single coffee cup in the sink. A water ring on the glass dining table. It was the kind of place that looked like it belonged in a magazine, curated and untouched. She worked quietly, listening to the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the building settling. There was something oddly peaceful about being surrounded by so much silence. Until she reached the study. She hadn't planned to clean in there. Lena had said to stick to the main areas. But the glass door had been left open, and inside, a few papers on the floor, a half-empty tumbler, and a thin layer of dust on the bookshelves. She stepped in, meaning only to tidy the obvious. And that's when she saw it. The photo. It sat slightly off-center on the desk, in a simple silver frame. She wouldn't have looked twice if it had been some man's graduation picture or a woman in a business suit. But this was a photo of her, aged about 6, missing front tooth, wearing the faded yellow dress with the ladybug buttons, the same one her mother made her wear every Sunday. Her breath caught. She stared at the frame, heart hammering. It wasn't just her in the photo. Her mother was beside her, laughing, hair caught mid-motion, holding Emily close like she was the most precious thing in the world. But how? Emily hadn't seen that photo in over a decade. Maybe longer. They didn't even own a copy anymore. It had been taken by a stranger at a community event, then passed around on flyers for some fundraiser. Her mother used to joke about how they looked like they belonged to someone else's life in that moment. Happy, put together, safe. Her fingers hovered near the frame but didn't touch. What was it doing here? And whose apartment was this, really? She turned, suddenly unsure, and nearly collided with him. He stood in the doorway. Silent. Still. Tall. Mid-30s, maybe? Sharp-cut suit. Loosened tie. The kind of man whose presence felt like a closing elevator door, swift, final, impossible to ignore. His eyes landed on the photo, then on her. Emily stepped back, heart in her throat. I'm sorry. I wasn't supposed to it. You weren't supposed to be here, he said quietly. But his voice wasn't angry. Just stunned. I'm subbing for someone. Lena. I think she cleans here usually, and I know Lena. He stepped into the room, gaze still locked on her. But she's never been in this room. Emily's throat tightened. I wasn't snooping. I swear. It was open. And I saw the picture. A beat. Then he said her name. Not Mississippi, not you. He said her name. Emily. She froze. How do you know my name? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed the room, picked up the photo frame, and held it like something fragile. I wondered what happened to you, he said softly. After that day. What day? He looked at her then, not as a stranger, but as someone who knew something she didn't. You don't remember me, he said. No, she admitted. Should I? His expression was unreadable. Maybe not. You were just a kid. And I was someone trying to decide whether or not to keep living. She didn't know what to say to that. He smiled faintly without humor. You said something to me that day. Just a little girl in a yellow dress. You probably don't even remember it. I really don't. I do. His voice was steady now. Because that one sentence, it kept me alive. She stared at him. Disoriented. Silent. And then quietly. Who are you? He paused, then extended his hand. Daniel Thorne. I own this apartment. And about 6 others in this building. Of course. A millionaire. A man with her childhood photo on his desk. A man she apparently saved without ever knowing it. And now she was standing in his apartment by mistake on a night she was never supposed to work. Emily didn't take his hand. Not right away. If you're still here, you're amazing. Hit like if you love true stories, it helps us keep going. She was still processing. Still trying to make sense of how her face, a 6-year-old version of herself, had ended up framed in a stranger's home. Or why that stranger looked at her like she was some kind of answer to a question he never meant to ask aloud. Daniel Thorne, she repeated, voice low. He nodded once. You really don't remember, do you? She shook her head slowly. No. I'm sorry. His fingers grazed the edge of the frame. It was a community center. In the South End. Summer program for kids. I was volunteering. Well, pretending to. Emily tried to picture it. Her mom used to take her to things like that when the rent was late and the fridge was empty, places where snacks were free and no one asked too many questions. The vague blur of folding chairs and faded paint came to mind, but nothing specific. You were sitting alone on the steps, he continued, holding a juice box like it was a secret. Emily almost smiled. That sounded like her. I just stepped outside. I wasn't in a good place that summer, he said. Everything felt done, like I was circling a drain and no one noticed. And I said something? He nodded. You looked up at me, all freckles and attitude, and said, hey, you look like you need a snack. My mom says sad people should eat bananas. Want half of mine? Emily blinked. That's it? That's it. A breath. But something about it, the simplicity, the sincerity, it made me laugh. First time in months. And I sat down, ate half that banana. And your mom came over and offered me a job. Emily's brow furrowed. My mom. She was running the kitchen that day. Volunteer coordinator. Gave me something to do. Introduced me to her friend who needed a tech guy. That led to my first real contract. He looked down at the photo. Your mother changed my life. And you cracked me open just enough to let it happen. Emily swallowed. She didn't know what to feel. Gratitude? Grief? Confusion. Her mom had passed 5 years ago. A stroke. Quick, unexpected, brutal in its finality. They hadn't been close at the end. Too many regrets. Too many things left unsaid. But this was something she'd never known. Why keep the photo? She asked quietly. Daniel glanced at it again. Because sometimes we need reminders of who we were and who helped us survive it. She nodded. Her hands were trembling. I didn't mean to come in here, she said. I wasn't trying to. I know. He said it gently, with none of the polished distance she expected from a man like him. Emily took a shaky breath. I should go. But as she turned, he asked, Do you still eat bananas when you're sad? She looked back, surprised by the question. I guess I outgrew that trick. Pity, he said. It worked. Emily found herself smiling, just a little, against her better judgment. He walked her to the door, slow and deliberate, not rushing, not trying to fill the silence. When she stepped into the hallway, he paused. I'm glad you came tonight, he said. I wasn't supposed to. Maybe you were. And then the door closed. She didn't tell Lena. Not that night. Not the next day. What would she even say? Hey, your rich client has a photo of me from when I was 6 and claims I changed his life with a banana? It sounded ridiculous, so she kept it to herself. Except, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Not just the photo, not just his face, but the way he said her name, like he'd carried it with him, like it mattered. 3 days later, her phone buzzed. Blocked number. One text. Hi Emily, this is Daniel. I know it's strange, but I was wondering, would you like to come back? She stared at the screen for a full minute. Then, why? The reply came fast. I'd like to tell you more about your mother. I think she'd want you to know. Emily hesitated. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then finally, 1 hour. That's it. This time he answered the door himself. Same apartment, same quiet wealth. But something felt different. Daniel wore a soft sweater, no tie. His hair wasn't perfect. His expression wasn't guarded. He stepped aside. Come in. She did. They sat in the kitchen. No formal dining room. Just 2 mugs of tea and a bowl of fruit between them. She taught me how to make real soup, he said. From bones and patience. Emily blinked. My mom. He nodded. She used to say you can tell a lot about someone by the way they stir. Emily laughed quietly. She said that. All the time. I stirred like a man who couldn't sit still. She made me start over. Daniel looked at her across the table. She was good to me, at a time when I didn't deserve it. Emily looked down. I didn't know. I think she wanted to protect you from the broken parts. She said you'd already seen too much. A beat of silence. Then Emily asked, Do you still make soup? Every Sunday. I'm free Sunday. He smiled. Then it's a plan. They sat in the quiet for a while. Not awkward, just settling. And somewhere deep in her chest, something small, something long asleep, began to stir. Emily didn't mean to return again after Sunday. She told herself it was just for the soup, just to hear one more story about her mother. Not because of him or the way his apartment no longer felt like a stranger's home or the way her name sounded different when he said it. But the next Sunday she came back, and the one after that. It became a quiet rhythm neither of them acknowledged aloud. She'd knock. He'd open the door like he'd been waiting. They'd talk. Not always about big things. Sometimes just about books, or the weird smell from the downstairs hallway, or the new plants he kept forgetting to water. But the conversations filled something, smoothed out old edges. Once, he asked if she remembered her mother's favorite song. Emily did. Moon River. The vinyl crackled when he played it, and they sat in silence as the notes curled between them like steam from a cup of tea. Ellie would have loved this, she thought, but her mom was gone, and somehow this strange accidental connection, built on a photo, a memory, a banana, felt like the closest she'd come to touching her again. She learned things she hadn't known. How her mother used to hum while she cooked. How she volunteered even when money was tight. How she used to write recipes in the margins of library books and return them with little hearts penciled in. And Daniel, he started to change too. Not dramatically, not all at once, but the tension in his shoulders eased. His voice softened. The harsh corporate cadence of his words faded when they spoke. And once, she caught him standing barefoot in the kitchen, humming without realizing it. She made fun of him for that. He didn't even defend himself, just handed her a spoon and said, "Your turn." They weren't dating. They weren't not. It was something in between, something delicate and undefined, like steam on glass. If she looked too directly at it, she was afraid it might disappear. Then came the night he asked her to stay. It wasn't in a romantic way, more like a moment of hesitation. Him at the door, her with one foot already in the hallway, and his voice quiet. "You don't have to go, you know." She turned. "It's late. You could stay. There's a guest room. Or the couch." Her heart beat once, hard. Then again. She searched his face for subtext, found none, and said, "Okay." He showed her the guest room, left a folded blanket at the foot of the bed, told her where the bathroom light switch stuck, then walked away without lingering. No pressure, no implication, just space. She closed the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the framed print on the wall, a watercolor of a forest in early morning light. Calm, still. She hadn't felt that in a long time. The next morning, she woke to the smell of toast and cinnamon. Daniel was already in the kitchen, wearing a t-shirt and sweatpants, barefoot, holding a spatula like he wasn't sure how it worked. "You cook now?" she teased, tying her hair back. "I do what I can." He passed her a plate. French toast, burnt on one side, perfect on the other. "You made this?" she asked. "I tried." She sat on the stool at the counter. He poured coffee. Neither of them spoke for a while. Then he said, "You belong here, you know." She glanced up. "What?" "You act like you're just passing through. But you don't have to." Emily stared at him. "I don't want to be a charity case." "You're not. I came here by accident." "I know." He looked at her steady. "But maybe accidents are just destiny in disguise." She didn't answer, didn't know how, so she picked up her fork and took a bite of the toast. "Too much cinnamon?" he asked. She shook her head. "Just right." Later that week, she brought over a box. Not her whole life, just little pieces. Pair of slippers. A book she'd read 3 times. A mug that said, "Don't talk to me until page 100. She left it by the door and didn't mention it. He didn't either. But the next morning, the mug was on the drying rack. And something about that broke her. In a good way. Then came the letter. slipped under the door late one night. She almost didn't see it. Just a plain white envelope. No stamp. No return address. Inside, one folded page, printed in serif font, clean and cold. Dear Ms. Vargas, it has come to our attention that you are residing at the personal address of Daniel Thorne. For reasons pertaining to corporate security and personal discretion, we strongly advise ceasing contact. Mr. Thorne's past is not as spotless as he presents it. We suggest caution. There was no signature, no name, just the weight of implication. She read it twice, then a third time, and felt the ground tilt. She didn't tell Daniel right away. Instead, she watched. For signs, for cracks. She Googled. Found nothing. No scandals. No lawsuits. Just business articles, charity functions, a few LinkedIn mentions of companies he'd started and sold. But the letter haunted her. One night, as they sat curled on the couch watching an old movie, she finally said it. I got a letter. Daniel muted the TV. What kind of letter? She handed it to him. He read it once, expression blank. Then he set it down and said, I was wondering when that would come. Emily blinked. You know who sent it? He nodded. They've been doing this for years. Anyone I get close to, even platonically, they send something like this. Make them think I'm dangerous. Or hiding something. Why? He exhaled. Because I am hiding something, but not what they think. Then what? He looked at her, and for the first time since they met, his voice cracked. There was a woman, years ago, partner, business and personal. We disagreed on a merger. I backed out. She lost everything. She's been trying to take me down ever since. Whisper campaigns, non-disclosures, anonymous threats. Emily swallowed. And me? She thinks you're leverage, or a liability. He leaned forward. I won't ask you to stay if this scares you, but I will ask you not to believe everything that comes in an envelope. Emily looked down at the letter, then at him. You didn't write this, she said. No. You didn't lie to me. No. Then I'm not going anywhere. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, like the weight in his chest finally lifted. Then he reached for her hand, and this time she didn't let go. The next week passed in quiet defiance of what had almost broken them. Emily didn't ask more about the woman from Daniel's past, and Daniel didn't bring her up again. Instead, they focused on the small things. Meals shared without checking the clock. Walks in the chilly air with gloved fingers brushing together, but not quite holding. Evenings where they read side by side in silence and didn't feel the need to fill it. But something lingered beneath the calm. A feeling like standing on a frozen lake, knowing spring would come eventually. Emily kept waiting for another letter, or a knock at the door, or worse, for Daniel to wake up one morning, change his mind, and decide she didn't belong in his world after all. Because the truth was, she didn't. She wasn't from marble countertops and imported candles. She wasn't a person with stocks or assistants or curated music playlists. She was a girl who once offered half a banana to a sad stranger because her mom taught her that kindness cost nothing, and sometimes it was all you had to give. And now that man was offering her everything, and she didn't know how to carry it. Came to a head one night after dinner. Daniel had made risotto, undercooked but enthusiastic, and Emily had teased him gently while scraping cheese off the pan. She was washing dishes. He was drying. It was the kind of simple rhythm that felt like a life quietly beginning. Until he said, "Move in with me." She dropped the plate. It didn't shatter, just clattered against the sink and spun in a dizzy circle, water flying. Emily stared at it. Daniel paused, towel in hand. Sorry, that wasn't supposed to be dramatic. She turned slowly. Move in. He nodded. You're already here most days. I like waking up and finding your socks in the hallway. That's not romantic. He stepped closer. It is to me. Emily laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. She dried her hands, then leaned back against the counter. Daniel, she said softly, you remember the little girl who gave you a banana and said you looked sad? He nodded. That girl doesn't exist anymore. He looked at her for a long time. Yes, she does. No, Emily said, voice shaking. She got tired and broke and stopped offering pieces of herself to people who didn't know how to hold them. Daniel stepped closer. But I'm still holding it. And what if you drop it? I won't. You can't promise that. No, he said. But I can promise this, if I do, I'll pick it back up. Every time. As long as it takes. Emily blinked hard. That's not how people work. They leave. Your mom didn't. Emily looked away. Daniel waited. Then, why are you really scared, Em? She hesitated. Then whispered, because I'm afraid I'll ruin this. That I'll stay too long or not enough. That one day you'll realize I don't belong here and wish I'd never walked into your study. Daniel stepped forward and placed his hand gently on her jaw, turning her face toward his. Listen to me, he said, voice low and steady. I didn't frame that photo because it was a cute picture. I framed it because it reminded me that the smallest moments matter. That kindness matters. That you mattered even then. And you still do. Emily's eyes burned. Stay because you want to. Leave if you have to. But don't ever think you're just passing through. She nodded slowly. And for the first time in weeks, her breath came without trembling. She moved in 3 days later. Not with fanfare. Not with boxes. Just a drawer, then two. A toothbrush. A sweater slung over the back of the couch. Daniel didn't hover. Didn't plan. He just made space. They celebrated with store-bought pizza and a movie that neither of them watched past the first 10 minutes. That night, she fell asleep with her head on his chest and his fingers tangled in her hair. And for once, she didn't wake up wondering if she'd overstayed. Weeks passed. Work calls came and went. The business world tugged at Daniel like a tide, but he returned to her each evening without question. Emily started writing again. Not anything serious, just notes. Observations. Memories of her mom. Bits of poetry she'd forgotten she knew. One morning, Daniel found a folded scrap on the counter. It read, some people show up in your life like open doors. Others like keys to ones you never knew were locked. He kept it in his wallet. Then came the call. Emily had stepped out to get coffee. Daniel answered his phone distractedly, still in a meeting haze. The voice on the other end was cool. Female. Precise. You didn't tell her everything, did you? Daniel froze. You still think you're protecting her, the voice continued. Still think the past won't catch up. He said nothing. You know how this ends, Daniel. She's just like her mother. The line went dead. When Emily returned, Daniel was quiet. Not cold. Just far away. She didn't push. She never did when he got like that. But her chest tightened anyway. She set down the coffee. Smiled. He kissed her cheek. And didn't say what was really on his mind. Because the truth was this. He had loved Emily's mother. Long ago. Quietly. Hopelessly. She had never known or pretended not to. She was in love with someone else, someone who didn't deserve her. And when that man left, she'd fallen apart. But not before asking Daniel one final thing. If anything happens to me, watch out for her. My girl. She's too soft for this world. Daniel had promised. And for years, he watched from a distance. until fate or something like it dropped Emily on his doorstep again. Now he wasn't just watching. He was falling. But what if it wasn't his place? What if this love wasn't his to have? That night, as Emily slept beside him, Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, staring into the dark. He reached for his phone, opened a new message, typed, "You're wrong. She's not like her mother." Paused, deleted it, typed again, "She's stronger," and hit send. It rained the morning everything changed. Not a storm, just that soft, steady kind that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. Emily stood by the window in Daniel's apartment, her fingers wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from. The city beyond the glass was blurred, hazy, like someone had painted it in watercolors and then wept over the page. She didn't know why she felt so restless. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was the fact that Daniel had been distant lately, kind, attentive, but somehow quieter. Or maybe she'd simply grown too used to waiting for good things to break. She was still standing there when she heard the drawer close behind her. She turned. Daniel was at the table holding a photo frame. The one. Her photo. The one of her and her mother from that summer afternoon. He looked up and said the one sentence that unraveled everything. "I loved her." The words landed like a dropped glass. Not loud, but shattering all the same. Emily didn't move. "My mother." Daniel nodded. "Before she met my dad?" "No," he said, "while she was with him." Her breath caught. "We never acted on it," Daniel added quickly. "She loved him, even when he didn't deserve it. But I loved her anyway. Quietly. From a distance. And when she died, He broke off, jaw tightening. "She made me promise to look out for you." Emily's fingers curled around the mug. "So this all of this?" "No," his voice cracked. "This wasn't about a promise. Not anymore. Not for a long time." "Then what was it about?" He stepped closer. "It was about you." Emily shook her head. "You found me again. Let me into your life. Into your home." Was I ever more than just a connection to her? "Yes," he said without hesitation. "From the second I saw you in that apartment. You weren't your mother. You weren't a memory. You were you." "Then why didn't you tell me?" "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid that if I did, you'd walk away." Emily looked at him for a long time. "I would have," she said. Daniel's throat bobbed. She set the mug down gently. "I need to go." He didn't try to stop her. Didn't follow. Just whispered, "I'm sorry." And then she was gone. Days passed. The apartment felt hollow without her. Daniel tried to keep moving: conference calls, quarterly reports, meaningless dinners with other rich men who talked in percentages instead of feelings. But nothing settled. He stopped playing music. Stopped cooking. Stopped sleeping. The photo stayed on the table. Unmoved. Untouched. He considered putting it away. But he couldn't. Because the look on Emily's face that morning, that betrayal, that heartbreak, it wasn't just about her mother. It was about him. About what they'd almost built. And what he'd lost. Meanwhile, Emily found herself in places she hadn't been in years. Old neighborhoods. The park where her mom used to read on a blanket under the oak tree. The corner cafe where she'd shared tea with Lena the night before her mom's funeral. Everything felt louder. More fragile. She kept thinking about the way Daniel had looked at her, not with guilt, not even desperation, but grief. Honest. Raw. Human. He didn't use her. He loved her. And that terrified her more than anything. Because if she forgave him, it meant trusting that love again. It meant choosing to believe that even if the past was tangled, the present could still be real. 3 days later, she returned. She didn't knock. She still had her key. The apartment was quiet. Daniel was at the piano, not playing, just sitting. His hands resting on the keys, unmoving. When he heard the door, he didn't look up. "Did I imagine this?" he asked softly. Emily stepped closer. "No." He turned slowly. Their eyes met. And she crossed the room, knelt beside him, and took his hand. "I'm angry," she whispered. "I'm hurt. I know. But I still love you." Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I never meant to lie." "You didn't," she said. "You just didn't trust me with the full truth." "I should have." She nodded. "I'm here now," she said. "Not because I forgot what happened, but because I remembered what we built." He squeezed her hand. "Stay?" he asked. Emily nodded, and this time it wasn't uncertain. The next morning she unpacked fully. Not just her clothes, not just her favorite mug, but her memories, her fears, her past. And Daniel met each one without flinching. He told her more stories about her mother, stories no one else remembered. She told him about the years that came after, the loneliness, the guilt, the silence. Together they stitched a new narrative, not perfect, not painless, but whole. One evening she found a box on the kitchen table. Inside, a new frame, but not for the old photo. This one held a new picture, the two of them on the fire escape, coffee in hand, the skyline behind them, and laughter frozen in time. Taped to the glass was a note. "This time, I'm keeping the memory with you in it too." And when Emily smiled at that, she knew. This wasn't a second chance. It was her first real one, the one that stayed.